Welcome to the 902 podcast, the official podcast of the Lancaster County Sheriff's Office in Lincoln, Nebraska. I'm Captain John Vick, and I want to thank you for tuning in. This podcast will give you an inside look at LSO with topics and guests to discuss public safety issues impacting Lancaster County. Be sure to subscribe for highlights on news, cases, and the people working for you at LSO. You can also follow us across social media by searching for @LSO Nebraska. That's @LSO Nebraska on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Welcome to the 902 podcast. We are here today to talk about the LSO Marine Unit. We're up early to fit John Brady into our schedule this morning. Thanks for coming off third shift, John.
Good morning.
Appreciate you being here.
I appreciate you having me.
And Chief Deputy Ben Houchin is in the house as well.
Up and chipper.
So we are here to talk about all things water safety, and nobody better to talk about it than Deputy John Brady from LSO's Marine Unit. But before we get into all that stuff, John, we want to hear a little bit about you. So what's your background? Where are you from? How did you become who you are today?
Oh, well, I'm from Southern California. I was born and raised in a town called Chino, California, which is about 20 miles or so east of Los Angeles. And so I kind of grew up just off the beach there. I grew up on the beach, Huntington Beach, Newport Beach area is where I kind of did all my stomping when I was a youngster. So I've been around the water a long time. But I grew up in Southern California, a totally different lifestyle than what I currently live here in Nebraska. And kind of ended up in Nebraska following my military career. I had a couple of sons early on in my early 20s, and we wanted to raise them in a much more stable environment than Southern California was, where I lived in an apartment for $2,800 a month. It's a little tough. So we decided that we were going to move to Lincoln, Nebraska because of a job opportunity that their mother had. She was born and raised here in Lincoln.
Okay.
So the company that she went to work for gave us 2 weeks to move here, and I think we were here in 3 days. I was ready to roll. We just loaded up about a quarter of what we had and left the rest, and ended up in Nebraska in the fall of 2001.
Wow.
So, so the transition from California to Nebraska was pretty intense. Prior to moving to Nebraska, though, when I got out of the military, I became a firefighter for Hermosa Beach, California.
Okay.
That was my goal. That's why I went into the military. I was very much so involved in sports growing up. That was kind of my way to kind of stay out of trouble. Although I did get in a little bit of trouble when I was a kid, but it's just part of it. But sports definitely kind of kept me somewhat on the straight and narrow path. Played a lot of football, played mostly soccer. I grew up a soccer player. But kind of got pretty decent at football, and that was kind of my path. But that's really what kind of kept me from basically doing one of two things in the town that I grew up in. My town had a prison in it, Chino Penitentiary. So most of my friends are either working at the penitentiary or living there. So those were the two choices that I had back then.
Right.
So sports got me out of there, and then eventually at the end of the day, the military was my option to kind of move on and go see some different things and do some different things. And so I chose the Navy.
Okay.
And it had a lot to do with growing up on the beach. You know, we got to spend a lot of time in San Diego, did a lot of surfing in San Diego, did some stuff like that. And San Diego is obviously a very large Navy town. So I saw a lot of the boats, a lot of the crew members, a lot of stuff like that. And it's dang commercial, that stupid commercial that came on TV. That
Did you see the world?
I saw a lot of the world.
Yeah.
I saw a lot of the world. I actually did a very rare thing in the military where I took a boat from Bremerton, Washington, all the way around the world to Norfolk, Virginia.
Wow.
So I got to sail the entire world on the USS Nimitz, which was a phenomenal tour. It was kind of the Nimitz was one of the first, or was the first nuclear aircraft carrier. So it was kind of the pride of the fleet, and so that tour actually was meant for other countries to see how badass we were with what we had.
Kind of a victory lap. Like,
yes, very much so.
Do this.
So I got to stop at a lot of really awesome places. I think I've probably been to over, 25, 30 countries, different countries.
Yeah.
Got to see a lot of really cool things and do a lot of badass work.
What was your actual career field in the Navy then, or did you have
a couple? I did a couple of things.
Okay.
I started out as an aviation bosun's mate handler, which was probably the coolest thing I ever did. That kind of fits into my personality very much. It is one of the most intense jobs that you can possibly have. A lot of people talk, you see all the movies about the SEALs and stuff, and obviously those guys are badass dudes, and they do some things that we'll never even think of. But when it comes to normal people in the Navy doing normal people jobs, I probably definitely for sure did the most intense job there was, which was directing aircraft on a moving boat. When we talk about aircraft, we're not talking about Cessna 152s here. We're talking about back then, F-14 Tomcats,
right,
and F-18 Hornets,
all the Top Gun stuff,
A6s, EA6s. These things were beasts, and to be an 18 and 19-year-old kid in charge of a multi-million-dollar airplane on a moving aircraft carrier with exhausts and everything else moving around, that is intense as it gets. It is extremely dangerous. Before the Crab Show came on TV,
right,
it was rated the number one most dangerous job in the world.
Well, I'm sure the weather's just great the whole time you're doing it too.
Yeah. We did some operations, everywhere in the world. Alaska being one of them, and I actually witnessed what we call a ramp strike. I was doing what we call a TAD assignment, which is temporary assigned duty.
Okay.
And I was training other guys on the USS Lincoln.
Okay.
Which is another aircraft carrier, just a little bit newer than the Nimitz. And we were doing some operations off of Alaska, and the seas are rolling. These ships are just doing this, and these crazy-ass pilots are landing these jets on these decks that are pitching like crazy.
Yeah.
30 to 40 feet up and down. And a Marine pilot came in and bellied this thing on the back end of this Lincoln on the carrier. And I was standing on the flight line looking down at it. When it came in, all of a sudden you couldn't see the jet anymore.
Okay.
Because of the pitch. And then all of a sudden the jet popped back up because the pitch went down, and he bellied that thing and hit the back end of that boat and slid across that deck probably, 25 yards from me. Wow. I just laid down in a fetal position, thought I was dead. It went right by me. And there's a couple hundred people on this deck, at a time. Flight operations is pretty big. And this thing flew right by, just slid right by me along the deck. And the last thing I remember laying down, I could see the guy, and the pilot punched out while he was sliding across the deck. He punched out of that 18 and landed on the deck.
Wow.
Parachute caught wind because we're doing 30 knots.
Okay.
Shoved him off the boat. And, aircraft carriers have like combs, like curbs. His parachute got caught in that combing, and he just dangled off the side of the boat. It's a true story.
Bad day.
Craziest. But that is why I love that damn job.
Yeah.
It was as intense as it gets, and that's just one. I mean, there's really bad ones, stories that I got too, but that was successful. He survived.
Yeah.
They just pushed that thing off the deck, and it became a fish habitat, I'm assuming at some point, but a very expensive one.
So that's career field number one.
Yeah.
And then what else did you do?
So then I got into rescue swimming.
Okay.
And that was actually only because a buddy of mine that was actually on the deck with me as well. He started that. He wanted to go do that. And he was a very good friend of mine, and I wanted to follow that path because I thought it was super cool. I was always, again, I used to remember growing up on the beach, my mom, she'd drive us nuts because we'd all be on the beach. I'm one of 5 kids. My mom would take us to the beach, and then my mom was a phenomenal athlete. Huge softball player, but just a phenomenal athlete. My mom literally would take us to the beach, and then she'd disappear for like a long time. We're like,
Uh-huh.
And as we got older, we realized what she was doing. She would walk out into the water and swim around the Huntington Beach Pier.
Oh, wow.
So she'd swim all the way around this damn pier, and it took us quite some time to figure out what the heck she was doing. And then, as we got older, we were getting freaked out. We're a bunch of kids crying on the beach right now. We'd probably get a ticket for that. But,
right. but that's how we grew up back then.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I rode to the beach in the back of a pickup truck. So, it's different times. But, she would do that. So I got really big into swimming because then I would start doing it with her.
Right.
I'd start swimming a lot out in the ocean with her. And people need to understand, actually, we can probably get into this eventually later, is, we have those swimming areas that we have. It's a lot different than, swimming in the ocean and swimming in the lake are two different things. If you're used to swimming in the ocean, you've probably created a pretty decent, stable ground for yourself when it comes to swimming.
Yeah.
But if you're only used to lake swimming and stuff like that, it's a different world. You can't just jump in and think that everything's going to be okay. And you can see ground. One thing about water is people don't understand is everything looks closer than it actually is. When you're running on the beach and you're running from pier to pier, that pier looks pretty close until you're an hour into it and you're like, Jesus, that thing hadn't gotten any closer. Mm-hmm. It's the same thing with water. You use every single muscle in your body when you're swimming, every single one of them. And the one that you probably use the most is your brain, because it can fail on you pretty fast. Once your brain, your mindset starts to fail while you're swimming, you're in a lot of trouble.
Right.
You start to lose focus. You start to panic. And the worst thing in the world you can do in water is panic. So, if you don't have a strong swimming foundation, either growing up or have a pool in your backyard, most guys like that can tell you that, you jump off the boat and think you're going to swim because you maybe had a toddy or two. Bad things happen.
Right.
So, I had a really good swimming foundation, so I wanted to use that, and that's what I did. I did a lot. I was assigned to the swimming rescue team, mm-hmm. And got to swim in a lot of places. The Persian Gulf was one of them.
Would you deploy off of like helicopters and stuff, or off the boat, or how?
All three.
Okay.
All three. So we have swift watercraft that we would do. I got to jump off a carrier, which is 90 feet.
Yeah.
If most people don't know, from water to deck is 90 feet.
Wow.
That's a hell of a jump. And then aerial aircraft, mostly Helos, HA-60s, stuff like that. So it was a job built just for me, my mindset.
Yeah.
It's just kind of the way I roll, basically.
So if you had that belly landing after your rescue swim, you could have just jumped off the deck if you wanted to.
Yeah. Well, and they did. I mean, that's exactly what those guys do.
Yeah.
That's what their job is. That they're those AWs, or what they're called, are around that boat full time.
Yeah.
There's always one up. So for stuff just like that.
Crazy. Hey, I'm Captain John Vick with the Lancaster County Sheriff's Office. We hope you're enjoying this episode of the 902 podcast. If you'd like to hear more episodes and you haven't already, be sure to hit that follow button in the top corner of your app or browser. That way you'll be the first to know about important updates and new episodes of the 902 podcast. Also, if you're interested in learning more about career opportunities at the Lancaster County Sheriff's Office, be sure to check out joinlso.com. Now, back to more with Deputy John Brady of the LSO Marine Unit. So at some point, you decided that you wanted to get as far away from water as you possibly could, so you came to Nebraska.
True story. True story.
But you kind of talked about how you got from California to here, which was not a water related decision, but you also made the decision to get from some of the fire rescue stuff, and then you got into law enforcement. So
yes.
How did that happen?
So when I came to Nebraska, my goal was to get into the fire department, Lincoln Fire and Rescue.
Okay.
That was my plan. It was my plan from going into the military. I was very blessed to have a man in my life when I was a youngster. His name was Mike McCoy, and he was a battalion chief for Orange County Fire Authority, which is a massive fire department in Southern California. Probably one of the greatest dudes I ever met growing up. He was my soccer coach. He was, he had sons my age and a daughter my age, and he was like the guy that I looked up to outside my dad, but he kind of instilled that into me. And that when I was, just to kind of go back a little bit, I fought my first fire when I was, I think, probably 14.
Wow.
Like I was in my first house that was fully engulfed. I was super young, 14 or 15 years old, and that's because I was doing ride-alongs with Mike. And he had this, what I thought was the coolest thing ever, was a large Suburban with all kinds of buttons in it, at that age. And I followed him, and I'd do it several times a month, probably until he wanted to kick me out.
Yeah.
And I followed this fire department around forever until I was old enough to go in and do it myself. And at that time, it was a little tough to get hired. There were thousands of applicants for every opening. So I traveled all over the Midwest or the Southwest. Trying to get hired is very difficult. And that's when he told me he was part of the decision was, the military would really help.
Okay.
So that was part of that decision as well. There's a number of things, but that was a major one. But anyway, when I got out, I got hired immediately at Hermosa Beach, and kept that EMS feeling that I always wanted to do alive. I earned my EMT in the Navy first. So I got to go out and do what I love to do. So when I came to Nebraska, my initial thought process was just transfer into LFR. LFR was going through a transition at that time between their own paramedics and working with a private company. That was that transition period in 2001. And I don't necessarily
That's
know.
when they became Lincoln Fire and Rescue.
Right,
and
the rescue part of it.
Okay.
Yep, where they got their own ambulances.
Right, okay.
So it didn't take long for me to realize, well, maybe this is just bad timing, and I didn't necessarily have to work because of the opportunities that we had. So I wanted to make sure I was going to do the right thing.
Right.
And then 9/11 happened. I remember it was very, 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 very soon after I got here. And I almost went back in. I was ready to go. And my wife at the time stopped me. She said, you need to chill out and relax, like every other veteran probably did. So I realized I had to go back to work because I was just sitting around teed off at the world and wanted to go back into the military. So I applied at the Department of Corrections and was assigned to D&E, where I worked in a housing unit for, I think it was a year and a half. And this goes into my law enforcement story. I have a pretty strange story, to be honest with you. I've told a lot of people this, but I was sitting in a housing unit and they assigned this guy to come in and learn from me, whatever, OJT time is what they called it back then. And this guy walks in, he's a big old dude. And I said, hey man, where are you from? And he's telling me where he's from. And I was like, how'd you get here? And this and that, just conversations. He goes, well, I was a cop in Ashland. And I said, well, if you're a cop in Ashland, why are you standing in this bubble right now? Not to get into the weeds on this, but apparently things went wrong.
Okay.
And he found a new job. But one of the things he said is if you wanted to be a cop, that'd be a good place to go right now. And I said, oh, okay. So that very same day, I'm not even kidding you, I got in my car. I didn't even know where Ashland was. And I drove to Ashland. And I realized that the police department is no bigger than this room.
Right.
Knocked on the window. And this guy opens up the little blinds. And I said, hey, I'm here. I hear you guys are looking to hire police officers. And he's like, yeah, we are. And he slid this application underneath the window. And it was, back then they weren't online now or nothing like that. It was all written. So I grabbed the application, went back in my car, filled it out in my car. 10 minutes later, I walk in and slide it under the window. And long story short, within 8 hours, I was a police officer in Ashland.
Wow.
Yeah. I swear to God.
Wow.
And they were in need of help really bad, even back then. So I had a couple of interviews, very short and very quick interviews with the staff there.
And that's back when you could kind of work a little bit before going to the academy.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I worked by myself on my own shift, patrolling before I even went to the academy, which was okay.
Yeah.
It was
A
fine.
lot of places did it.
Right, especially the small communities that are struggling with finding employees.
Yep.
So I was working my own shifts on my own before I'd even gone to the academy.
Wow.
So it was a different way to do it, but probably not as different as I think back west, where the communities are even smaller.
Right.
In the early 2000s. So, but for here, very different.
Sure.
And then I was there when I went to the academy. I went to the academy with my roommate was Sergeant Jason Mayo.
Oh,
I'm sorry for that.
Yeah, I know. I thought you were asleep over there.
it's early.
It is.
I brought you guys in.
You remember?
early.
Yeah, you made us get up early and
sorry
come in
about
here.
But he was my second roommate. My first roommate didn't make it through. His roommate didn't make it through, so they combined us and put us into one room. And you guys know Jason. He is about as big of a character as you can probably build if you were trying to build one. Super amazing dude, and very smart. Used to irritate the crap out of me because, I'm not a smart dude. I had to work in the classroom. Jason does not. He's just a brainiac. So I would be in there studying like crazy because I had kids and I had bills to pay. And he would just be laying there jocking around in his bed, pissing me off because he didn't need to study. But anyway, one of the big jokes in the academy was how much money I made as compared to those guys. I took a pay cut from the state corrections department to become a national police officer. So I did not make a lot of money. It's like $9.25 an hour or whatever it was. Mm-hmm. And they thought that was funnier than heck. So, but I told Jason and I told the other guys that were there, I said, within a couple of years, I'll be a Lancaster County deputy. There's no doubt. That was my goal. That's where I was going.
Yep.
And then within 2 years, I was a Lancaster County deputy.
Right.
I just stuck to the plan, and that's how I ended up. Your fail, not mine, but I'm here. So
snuck him past the goalie.
That's right.
I still remember doing that polygraph on John. I haven't recovered from all what he had to tell me.
You guys were hurting, and I appreciate it.
Yeah.
So that was 20 years ago.
Yeah. You started
That's nuts.
Yeah, you started one badge number right before me.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
That was went to the academy in what was it? Spring of 2003.
Yep.
So I'm now on 20 years, which just blows my mind that it went really fast.
Goes fast.
So yeah, now I'm here for, what are we on, 17?
Yeah.
17 years, 8, whatever it is. So that's how I ended up at Lancaster County, was via Ashland Police Department.
So when you got here, you started like a lot of us do on the road, working patrol stuff, but you've assembled a hat collection of jobs since then. So
yeah,
just let's talk a little bit about, what you're up to
Sure.
on your day job or your night job.
Yeah. So it's my dad's fault. One of the conversations I had with my dad early on when I was in the military, I was kind of struggling with, I don't know how much time we have, but I'm a little bit of a talker when we get going.
I didn't notice that.
Yeah. But
we're not paying by the minute.
I've
we're not on the cell plan.
That's
so.
good. I've lived quite a life. I got lots to say. But my dad, during one of the conversations, I was frustrated in the military about promoting. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do because that adjusted what you could do.
Yeah.
It's very difficult. But my dad just said, and I don't even know if he remembers this, but he told me, he said, you just need to stay necessary. And that stuck to me. Like, it just stuck to me. And that is how I've kind of led my career, my entire career, was to make sure that I was necessary. I think when you fall into this weird area where you don't feel like you're necessary, like you're just one of the group, you start to go backwards. And I just refuse to do that. I just won't do it. So when I got hired on, I went into patrol like anybody else, at least back then. And I don't, to be honest with you, I don't know if it happens now, but you usually become a contract deputy.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
You just end up in one of the contracts, whether it be Waverly or Hickman, and you kind of do your time like everybody expects. You got to do your time. It didn't last very long. It was less than one bid, if I remember right. and the captain in patrol at the time had noticed my traffic numbers were pretty high, and we had just started a traffic unit.
Yeah.
So almost immediately, I was taken out of Hickman and put into a brand new Charger that the department had bought for the traffic units, and I was put in the traffic unit, and I did that for over 3 years. I've almost always been in some sort of special unit since day one.
Yeah.
Almost since day one. And that goes back to what my dad told me. Stay necessary. Do what you need to do to make sure that they need you. Because when they don't need you anymore, things ain't going right. So that's what I've done. And so I went from the traffic unit. I went back into the patrol, from there very briefly. And then I was selected to go into the Fugitive Task Force, which was probably the coolest job that you could have at the sheriff's office, to be honest with you. Did that for 4 years.
Yep.
With a couple of different stints in there covering stuff. You know, I did, in that 4 years, I did a little bit of time in investigations to cover and some other things. And then while on the task force, we worked very closely with the TRU, our Tactical Response Unit. And I realized, hey, that's another thing that I could probably help out with. As a negotiator, as you can tell, I speak a lot. And that's kind of what negotiators do.
Right.
Obviously. So I trained myself, did a lot of special training on my own. And then I kind of went to the office and said, hey, we don't technically have a certified negotiator right now. I'd be willing to do that. And they jumped on it and been doing that ever since.
Yeah, we did that. We used to have one of our members was the negotiator, and a lot of them would want to rotate off of that as we got new people, and having John come in there and get his expertise on that was a big help, and then it helped us with our manpower issues at that time too.
Well, and I think a lot of people, you know, they see the tools that we use and the equipment that we have, and they just assume that we're all just, you know, high speed and run around and, you know, want to get in fights and all that stuff. But I think the biggest tool on the tool belt is exactly what you're talking about. It's using your brain and talking with people.
I'm talking tactics.
And, you know, you're able to disarm people that way.
I'm a SWAT team member's nightmare. That's what they call me. They hate negotiators because
that's not true, John.
I'm duly trained, which is good. I am an operator trained, right? So I can do a lot of things. But I'm that guy that, you know, takes toys away from kids,
right?
You know, and that's just
can't
that's
kick
the
the door
lifestyle.
when John comes. Yeah,
but the one thing about that too, and this could be a totally another podcast. Actually, would be a really good one. But you know, negotiators on TV are negotiating hostage situations in liquor stores and stuff like that, or whatever the case may be, and that's actually very, very far from what actually takes place.
Yeah.
They're called crisis negotiators. They're not called hostage negotiators, right? Hostage negotiators have FBI on their vests and, you know, do weird things. But crisis negotiators are negotiators who work regularly on what's happening in the world on a regular basis.
Yep.
Rather it be mental health, rather it be just a really bad day, rather it be a career criminal that just doesn't care, right?
Yep.
Believe it or not, he's still in crisis, and so are the people that he's dealing with. So I never in any of my days that I think that was something that I would be attached to. Always been known as a talker, but not in that format in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
So it's kind of fun. If you have a second, I'll tell you exactly how it happened.
Go.
We were and I'm sure Ben will attest to this because I know he was there, I think. We were in a standoff at I don't know, am I allowed to say where it was?
Sure.
I don't even think it exists anymore, actually. The Quality Inn by the airport. I think it's a totally different hotel now.
Yep.
Yeah.
But the Quality Inn, what was that, the 4th or 5th floor or something like that? It was protection order issue or whatever is how it started. I was on the task force. The SWAT team was called out because it was one of our calls. Anytime the task force is on a call for service, the Lancaster County SWAT team handles, or TRU team handles that call for service. Anyway, it was Sergeant Josh Clark back then, I believe. I don't mean to laugh. I love him. He knows it. He was talking to this guy on the phone, and it was so painful just listening to Josh talk to this guy. Josh is a good man. Josh is not a talker when it comes to stuff like that. I love Josh if you're listening. But I had to take the phone from Josh because I couldn't take it anymore. And I started talking to this guy, and he was hiring a kite, doing his thing, and
him and his buddy were in there.
We didn't know his buddy was in there, though.
Right, but we did know that they barricaded the door on us.
Correct.
So we were having a hard time figuring out how we're going to go get in there.
Yeah, thank God we didn't do what we thought we were going to do. But Josh was sitting there, and he's going nowhere with this guy because he's high and he's just not. But Josh, this guy was from California, and this is how this got started. He was a lot of dude and what up, dog, and this and that. And Josh is from some small town in Nebraska. I'm fairly confident. Yep, and had no damn clue what this guy was saying. He just couldn't even understand it.
Different language.
And I am laughing in a serious way. No, I'm not. I'm really laughing in this room listening to him. So I take the phone from him, and I start talking to this dude. And this thing went on for 6 hours plus. It was a long one.
Yeah.
And ultimately, at the end of the day, we got him out of there without anybody getting hurt. And that's the day that I got hooked on doing this. And I thought to myself, again, with my dad in my head, was that's the way to be necessary.
Yeah.
You know? So from that day forward, just on chance, and talking to this guy on the phone, I realized that's something else that I could do.
Yeah.
And so I started doing that. And that became probably my primary role on the tactical response unit. And then...
Well, that was the first of many. I mean, because you've done a hell of a job.
Multiple since then.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Some good, some bad. You know, you keep track records and stuff like that in your head because that's just what you do. But I think we're well ahead.
I think we've definitely realized that the crisis negotiation is a necessary
tool. Yeah. I mean, if you can talk them out of the place without having to put anybody in harm's way.
Oh, we would much rather do that.
Much rather do that.
Yeah.
And Gene, you know, it's the levels of, you know, when you go in those tactical situations, the number one people are your hostage. Mm-hmm. Next is your innocent bystanders, and then it's the officers, and then it's your suspect. And
that's our priority of life.
That's our priorities on those. So, but
right.
I've known John has done several instances where individuals are wanted on crimes and threatening suicide, and we were able to talk them out and make them successful. They all haven't been, but most of them have been.
Sure. Yeah, as much as you get made fun of and stuff like that, because that's what we do as friends and cops. I think they understand exactly what I'm doing and why we do it. They very much so respect what I'm doing.
Anytime
we just razz each other.
Anytime you can keep us out of a grand jury, that's a good thing.
Right. That's true, but usually it gets me in one.
Well, you found something else to be necessary too, and that's the LSO Marine Unit.
Yes.
So we're going to take a real quick break, and when we come back from that, we will dive in, no pun intended,
right,
to the LSO Marine Unit and everything that unit has to bring to the table too. Awesome. We'll be right back.
If you want a challenging career, a career where you can make a difference in your life, your family's life, and the lives of those in your community, come and join the Lancaster County Sheriff's Office. To learn more or to apply, visit us online at www.joinlso.com.
All right, we're back talking with Deputy John Brady about the LSO Marine Unit today. So, John, talk to us about how the Marine Unit at LSO got started. What's the purpose of the Marine Unit?
Sure. The purpose, it kind of started several years ago, actually, when the thought process came into mind. Obviously, it was a little bit selfish for me, being a boat guy, being a water guy. I love water. If there was a way I could be on the water all the time, I would. But I kind of saw an opportunity. It followed a call for service that I cannot remember It was a call for service out at Branch Oak. I do remember where it was, but I don't remember what it was. I actually, as far back as Chief Jarrett. And I went to Chief Jarrett after that call for service. And at that time, the sheriff's office just wasn't in a place to have something like this happen. And he explained that to me, and I kind of moved away from it. And then as the department changed and moved on, I always kept it in the back of my mind. But as it moved on, every time I would see an opportunity to just kind of bring it up, I would. And then Chief Duncan was around, and I went in there and talked to him. And I knew that he was actually from the same area. We grew up in the same area.
Yeah, California.
Yep, in Southern California. And I kind of brought that idea up to him as well, and he was for it. He thought it was a great idea, but it was very, very raw, obviously.
And I'll back up a little bit. I mean, I joke about you moving far away from water. You moved far away from the ocean, but we do still have a lot of water in Lancaster
We've
County.
got lots of water. We've actually, most people don't really know, but there are like 22 million square yards of water surface in just Lancaster County.
Yeah, a
We
lot
have
of
over 11 lakes.
flood control lakes, recreation
Correct.
areas.
NRD,
Yep.
state rec areas. So we have over 11 here in Lancaster County that serve as recreational areas as well as fishing and boating.
Right.
Well, Branch Oak becomes its own town during the summer.
Yeah, it does. It does. And that is our largest lake. It's 1,800 acres of water surface.
Yeah.
So it's a lot. It's a big lake for us here on the eastern side of the state, for sure.
Yep. So you're pitching this.
Yeah, I'm pitching this to Chief Duncan, and he likes it. He understands where we're at, and I don't. It's two different levels of this building. You know, they've got totally something to think about as opposed to us down there.
Budgets and all
Correct.
that stuff.
Yeah, all kinds of things going on. And I think that the Marine unit got started because of another unit. To be completely honest with you, we are a little brother, or we exist because of that interdiction unit. Mm-hmm. That interdiction unit, those guys up on the interstate, they're just killing it up there, doing a phenomenal job. Provide a lot of opportunity for others.
Yep.
And I think that we're an example of that. Mm-hmm. And it just, when that stuff kind of happens, it gives you a little bit more leeway, a little more fluff room, to be able to provide for other things.
Sure.
And I saw the opportunity.
Yep.
And I kind of pushed for it. And then ultimately at the end of the day, the sheriff's office was, I pitched a pilot program to the sheriff and the chief, and, just said, hey, let's just see if it works.
Yeah.
We don't have to commit to anything, but here's a policy on it. And I wrote a policy on it, and let's just see if it works. Let's put it together and see if it works. I was able to obtain a boat for free. This boat has been around Lancaster County for a very long time.
Yes.
I believe it started, this boat, we have a 19-foot Kercraft ski barge is what it is. Most people will not know what that is. I don't even think they make those anymore. Okay. But it was initially used as LFR's dive boat. Way back when, it was one of its initial dive boats. And there's some pictures of it out there.
Okay.
Guys looking like Starsky and Hutch and emergency dudes, those uniforms.
The 70s,
Yep. So the boat was built in 1976. And so it is definitely an old boat, but its design of the boat suits what we're doing very, very well. It's just old.
Which is water-based enforcement.
Correct.
Safety mission.
Yeah. So our mission really is simple, and that's what Chief Duncan told me. He goes, the most important thing that you guys can do out there is just be present.
Yep.
Being present actually does a lot without having to do anything. And so that's one of our primary goals. Our goal is not to go out there and write as many tickets as we can. We have zero desire to do that. We want to make sure that we provide a safe, environment for folks, not just in Lancaster County, but people who are visiting Lancaster County's lakes. Give them that sense of feeling that, hey, they're out here. There's always folks with ill intentions. Mm-hmm. It's just life. If we can deter that just for simply being out there, that's our goal. And then on top of that, of course, is boating safety. Yep. Making sure not just with equipment, but also operationally. Yep. We want to make sure that they're abiding by the buoy standards and the no wakes and those types of things. There's lots of skiing going out there. So if we've got recklessness out there, we want to make sure that we tame that as much as possible. But on the equipment side, we want to make sure that people who are operating their watercraft, whether it be jet ski, boat, sailboat, whatever it is, there are certain requirements that they have to have. So we'll stop boats, and we'll make contact with folks, casual contacts with folks, just to make sure that, the basics are being met. The safety things are being met, rather they be Coast Guard approved life vests, which are very important. These are some of the things that people don't really think about. Depending on what type of motor you have, inboard, outboard, you have to have fire arresters on there. You have to have exhaust vents, because those combustible and they're super dangerous. Okay. But the basics being the life vests, the paddles, the horns and whistles, the bailing buckets, the throwing, flotation devices, stuff like that are going to prevent sometimes, accidents happen where they're just unavoidable, but if you have the means if you have the proper equipment to limit the risk of that person in there, whether it be the flotation device or life vest, that's important. So that's what we're out there doing, making sure that all of that stuff's there, because we can't always be there. So if we've enforced that the proper equipment is on your boat, when we're not there, they can handle it themselves very simply.
So if I'm out there and I'm having a good time with my family or whatever on Memorial Day, we're coming up on Memorial Day weekend. Mm-hmm. So if I'm out there having a good time with my family and I see you on your boat, mm-hmm. I could think one of two things. I think, oh crap, he's out there, he's trying to jam me up on
Put
something.
Your beer away.
Right. Or what you're really doing is you might come up and talk to me because you want to make sure that I've got my stuff straight in my boat.
Yes. Yeah, and we don't just stop the boats that are flying 60 miles an hour across the water. We're stopping everybody. We're not, and I shouldn't say stop. Stopping is a weird word. We're making contact with folks, and they're just safety checks.
Okay.
If you're doing something completely out of whack or something like that, then yeah, we're going to turn our lights on. We're going to stop and talk to you, yeah. Right? But the vast majority of contacts that we make are simply just boat safety checks, and saying hi to people, and making sure that everybody's having a good time, and just ensuring that.
It's amazing. I've gone out with you guys, and the number of boaters that wave and mm-hmm. thank you guys for being out there and doing all those things. And because I know they've seen things that probably wasn't correct, and they're glad that we're out there making sure those things aren't happening.
Yeah, I think the biggest benefit to, aside from the public, has been really, really good to us out there. Mm-hmm. Super, super good to us out there. Nebraska Game Parks.
Yeah. Huge partners.
When I pitched this idea to Game Parks, the first thing out of their mouth was thank you.
Yeah.
Super overwhelmed. They've got a lot of area to cover and not a lot of guys to do it.
Yep.
Guys and gals. So they were absolutely on board. I think he goes by Commissioner Arp, or the head of Nebraska Game Parks, Mr. Arp, wrote me a phenomenal letter. Just because I asked him to help sell the program.
Yeah.
Very appreciative of it. Mr. Luton, Stacy out here, yep. Who supervises these guys here in this area. Very, very helpful in creating this program, and anything that we need, because we are in our infancy for sure still.
Oh yeah, definitely trying to grow.
Yeah. He has been phenomenal. So Game and Parks has really been a big part of getting this going. They've been a great partner, and very appreciative of the Sheriff's Office going in there and kind of doubling efforts, mm-hmm. especially on these big weekends that are coming up.
Yeah. So as we close out our segment today, what are some safety reminders that you kind of want to leave our listeners with going into Memorial Day weekend and the whole summer?
Sure. One, obviously alcohol.
Yeah.
Right? Alcohol plays a big role into some of the mistakes that people make yep. all the time. The boats are no different than vehicles. Designate yourself an operator. There's nothing wrong that the lakes, people consume alcohol at the lakes all the time. Just be smart about it. And when you're out there, designate somebody, do the right thing. Mm-hmm. They don't, boats are not as easy to stop and turn as vehicles are. It takes a little bit longer, right? And lots of boats out there. So alcohol being one thing. Some of the rules that people don't understand, especially with alcohol, is a BUI, or a boating under the influence, is a 6-month suspension of your boating operations. It's a Class 2 misdemeanor. Your second offense after that is a 2-year automatic boating suspension.
It's actually a higher classification than
Class 1
than
misdemeanor.
A street DUI.
Correct.
Yeah.
And then, $1,000 fine, you could get jail time, stuff like that.
Right.
So I want people to understand there are consequences for doing
Absolutely.
that. Right. So they need to know that. And the other thing too is we see a lot of young kids operating boats. You must be at least 14 years of age in Nebraska to operate a boat. You also have to take a boater safety class if you were born after December 31st, 1985.
Okay.
So anybody after that time frame has to take this boater safety class. So you see that a lot. You see a lot of kids on jet skis and stuff like that, and they must be 14. They cannot pull skiers. You can't pull skiers until you're 16, like a regular vehicle, right?
Yep.
We don't pull skiers behind cars, but you get the point. So those are some of the things that people don't necessarily think about. And I'm just going to plug it right now because it's amazing, is Nebraska Game Parks puts out a boating guide every single year, 2023. And the reason why I like this boating guide is it is not like a Bible. It's not like a huge book.
Yeah.
It's very simple.
Yep.
It's very to the point, and everything that you need to know about operating a boat in Nebraska is in this book, and it's super simple. My guys carry them. We have a bunch of them on the boat. We hand them out.
Yep.
If there's an issue, they're super effective. That you can just read real quick and answer any question you have.
And if people don't run across you, but they want to get them, you could probably get them most places that you can get your park permit.
That's exactly right. So like any liquor store, typically around the lakes or whatnot, that you do get a park permit, have them.
Okay.
They're just a great reference when it comes to boater safety and what equipment to have and what the state laws are.
Awesome.
So
how about life jackets? It seems simple. Wear your life jacket, but a lot of times people are thinking about other things when they're out at the lake.
Yeah. So the two biggest violations that we see, one is you must have a Coast Guard approved life jacket for every person on that boat. So if you've got, 8 people on that boat and you got 7 life jackets, you are wrong. And it is the operator's issue, right?
Okay.
The operator, that it's not necessarily the boat owners.
Yeah.
Whoever's operating that watercraft at that time is responsible to make sure that everybody has a life vest. The second one is any child 12 and under must always be wearing a life jacket. So that's honestly, that's what our goal is to just give people a sense of we're out there, we're paying attention, we want you to have fun.
Yeah.
But if something goes down, whether it be accidental or whatever, that somebody's going to be there very quickly to handle it.
Well, go ahead.
Another big aspect, and this is a sad thing to have to bring up and talk about, but every year we have at least one drowning. And, that's is another reason why the Marine unit has been developed on that part of it too. Is first part is hopefully trying to rescue, but then it's the other aspect of it of
recovery.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and the chances of us, being in the right place at the right time to be there for a rescue are smaller.
Much smaller, yeah.
So I think it's huge because there's so much more that we can do from a prevention standpoint.
Yes.
And if we can help people to put themselves in a position where they're being as safe as possible, that's going to prevent more need for rescues down the road.
So those things adjust too. So when you're absolutely right when you say the chances are smaller, because they are, obviously.
Yep.
Throughout the summertime or the boating time frame, there's only 3 or 4 weekends that are big, really big,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
The rest of that, the boat's out there sporadically, on those weekends. But those big weekends like this one coming up, that number increases dramatically.
Yes.
Because like anything else, volume creates opportunity.
It does.
And the volume on the lake is much higher during those weekends. So if our boat is on there, that time, that ability to be there when bad happens is much, much higher as opposed to those other weekends. So if you plan it right and do it correctly.
Yeah, we have to be selective.
Sure.
About it, like any other staffing.
Yep. And going into staffing, we have 6 guys on this Marine unit, all dedicated to make this work.
Yep.
We ran into some hiccups obviously early on, and one of them being COVID. that really stumped the program. We put this together just prior to COVID.
Yeah.
And getting that thing going, and that hurt everybody.
Yeah.
So it stumped the program. But these six guys, these other five, six, me being the sixth, stuck around.
Yeah.
And there wasn't a lot of activity because it wasn't available. These guys stuck around. They're very dedicated to it, and we're very, very, very excited that we have some equipment changes on that boat that are very, very necessary to keep this boat on the water.
Right.
Upgrading the motor and the controls on that boat will increase its availability tremendously from here forward.
So, we have a mission statement here at the Sheriff's Office, and we have a formal mission statement, but informally, it really boils down to our job is to keep Lancaster County a safe place to live, work, and play. And there's not that many people that live at the lakes. There's a few people that work at the lakes, but there's a lot of people that play at the lakes. And such a big part of your unit's mission and the things that you and your crew are working hard to do is to keep the lakes and recreation areas in Lancaster County a safe place to play for everyone that enjoys them. And we're thankful for all the work that you do. John, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today, sharing those important safety tips with us. And we just can't thank you enough. Stay safe.